Good morning and welcome to another episode of Coffee Chats with Toby. Today, what we're going to do is we're actually going to target one of the most profound things that I see in my practice with a lot of very successful people coming and seeing me and all those who have a corporate desk job kind of like scenario. So today I'm going to talk to you about how we combat our progression, I suppose, in technology and work, where our bodies are designed to go and hunt and gather, but today we spend more time sitting on our computers at a desk and kind of trying to look at the little things that will 100% be affected and little ways that we can try and help to alleviate that without having too much of a negative, unrealistic implication on your lifestyle, your performance, your efficiency, or your effectiveness. So the first thing I'm going to jump into the elephant in the room, and we're going to look at purely and simply activity levels and what that means, obviously, to our weight. So obviously we know from previous videos that I've done, and obviously the extensive research that you guys have done, that weight loss to some degree, without going into too much detail, equals output versus input. If we're a desk orientated or a sitting computer person, or someone who maybe even is on the road a lot and doing a lot of driving for your work, you'll realize that your average step count for a day, across a week, or across a month, or across any time period is actually really poor. It's very bad. And the only way you're going to know that is obviously to look at it. But if you look at it, you'll find that that's the case, unless you're actively doing something to combat it. So that's problem number one. So how we can kind of look to solve it, the first thing is we need to know these numbers. We need to know this data, and we need to understand that this is a problem. Because if you don't understand it's a problem, you're not actually going to do something about it. One of the easiest two things that kind of brings this up for a lot of people is some people, when they go away on holidays, they actually lose weight. Others gain weight. Now, I'm not saying this is 100% going to happen for everyone, but it's a little pretty cool indicator as to what you do, or I could almost guess what type of lifestyle you live based on your answer to that question. So obviously when we go on holidays, we're usually a little bit more active, or at least in some degrees more active if we have a desk job in our usual day-to-day life. So by going out, removing the desk from the equation and actually going out and exploring the world, we actually increase our output. Now, our input isn't necessarily going to increase drastically overnight because our stomach has a level of capacity. Funnily enough, that capacity can grow infinitely. We haven't found the extent or a limit to the amount the stomach can grow, which is bewildering to me. But often your hunger levels will be pretty well established based on your previous habits. So if we then go overseas or even go on some sort of holiday, or even just take time off work and remove the desk and increase our activity levels, we'll usually, see a decrease in weight. Now, if that's the opposite that usually occurs with you, you may find that your work is actually really, really heavy labor intensive, or actually consumes a lot of your output, or your output is actually really quite high for a job, particularly in respect to the amount you eat. So when going on holidays, walking around and exploring might be actually a whole bunch less work and energy consuming than what you do for your work. So it's a really good indicator to see kind of what level or where you're at in regards to your work and your energy output. How do we fix this? So oftentimes this is very, 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 very personal. So it really depends on your role and the kind of things that you do in your role. But oftentimes what I like to do is I like to couple so certain things that you do with a habit that is active. So my usual go-to for an office person is, do you spend a lot of time on phone calls? And if they answer to me yes, I say, wonderful. Like, do you need to be sitting at your computer when on the phone? Now, oftentimes they say no. If they say yes, I get creative and I figure out a way to kind of make this work, or I go and look at a different behavior other than taking a phone call. It might be an email or something like that. Now with a phone call, I might say, all right, cool, that every time you're on the phone, I want you to stand up and I want you to just walk around. Simple as that. How does that kind of work for you? They go, yeah, that'd be great. They think it's nothing, but what ends up happening is if they're taking, 10, 15, 20, 100 calls a day, and they're walking around when they're on the phone, One, the actual movement is actually really good for your thinking processes, and you'll find you'll have a lot more intelligent conversations on the phone. But two, what you're doing is every time that phone rings, it's actually a reminder to get the hell up and start walking, which is, you know, super cool to have a reminder that specifically tells you to go ahead and do something. So that's one thing. Another indication or another example could be an email. If you send email to people on your same floor of the office building, really silly, but not many people will think much of it. If you send them an email because you need to have the paper trail, just jump up, walk over, tell them that you've given them an email and looking forward to their response, and then go back to your desk. That literally standing up, walking over and coming back to your desk, if you're sending 15 emails a day, you know, you're actually significantly going to improve and increase your step count. So there's a couple other things, little tips of the trade for weight loss side of things. Now, another really horrendous, this muscle is actually kind of the bane of my existence. I freaking hate it, and it's because it has so many implications on your general activity levels, the way you move, and often affects so many different chronic pain kind of conditions like lower back pain, hip pain, like a whole bunch of issues that really does my head in. The muscle I'm talking about is the psoas. So it's a PSOAS. It's a hip flexor muscle. Funnily enough, what it does is it actually attaches here in the lumbar spine, comes through into our hips. So I'm diving through here and attaches to the front of our femur here in our legs. Now, in a job that we sit a lot, whether it be driving or sitting at a desk, you can actually see, if you think about the two ends of those muscles, they're actually closer together. Now, what happens is, if we're in a prolonged, shortened state of this muscle, what that means is it's going to actually end up resting in that shortened state. So in other words, what that then means to us is it's kind of like a tight muscle. Now, this is really pragmatic when it comes to everything. So what you can actually look outside and have a look around and oftentimes tell what if the desk orientated workers compared to the more active lifestyle kind of workers. And the reason that you can tell that is because they move incorrectly due to the tightness in the psoas. So the way that we're designed, without getting into too much detail, is we're actually designed when walking to extend through our hips and push us forward. We're not actually designed to take a physical step forward like that and then drag our body. The easiest way to look at that is when the knee is behind the hips in this state, does the person bend the knee, or do they get that nice hip extension, knee behind hip, utilizing our glute to push you forward? That's a dead giveaway. Now, obviously, we then want to go, right, well, if this is me and I'm someone who sits down for long periods of time, how the hell do I prevent myself from getting to a point where my psoas gets tight and I start to get all these issues like lower back pain and all the rest of it? Two things. One, understanding it's a problem, just like everything else, is so damn important. Two, understanding how to actually walk properly, because we're a product of the way we use our body. And if we understand that we're actually meant to extend our hip when moving and walking, and we actually do a lot of walking in our day because we keep track of our step counter, we can ensure that every single step we take is actually elongating and trying to reverse the effects of our sitting when taking or walking around or taking those steps. Really crazy important, and you would not believe the effect that actually just walking properly using hip extension can help you and actually look after your body in the way that it's designed to be looked after and used. That's number one. Two, we just do a whole bunch, three, we can just do a whole bunch of stretches or know that we need to jump up every so often and give our hip flexors a little bit of a stretch and a movement. So it might be that we set an alarm on our phone for every 20 minutes to just literally stand up and do a slight 2-second stretch. I'll show you in a second. Or it might be a similar thing to the phone call. It might be the phone call. Every time we get a phone call, we stand up, we walk around. And we focus on the way that we're walking is using hip extension. So you can tell here I'm a bit lazy. I'm a bit of a cheat. I always want to make sure that when I do one thing, I get as much advantage as I possibly can. So if weight loss is a thing or looking after our weight is one thing and making sure we don't get tight hip flexors is another, We can solve both problems by doing the phone call thing or the email thing and ensuring that we're actually walking adequately and properly. A simple stretch for the hip flexor is really quite simple. It's essentially just getting into that position I was just talking about. So all you got to do, without getting too technical with doing really effective stretches or anything, you just got to get your knee behind your hip, push your hips forward to extend that angle, and you should kind of feel a pull in the front of your hip here. If we then stay in that same position, but rise our arm above our head and keep that knee behind our hip, that will actually look to try and get the upper muscle fibers of that psoas muscle as well. There's obviously 100,000 ways to skin a cat, and certainly a million different stretches that we can do for our hip flexor. But to literally just understand that stretching it and staying mobile through that that lower limb and getting our knee behind our hip and get into hip extension as much as possible, it's actually going to prevent a hell of a lot of issues that you get by being an office worker. Honestly, it will save a lot of heartache, a lot of pain, and honestly, just get the most out of yourself. It's really quite exciting and quite important. Last but not least, because I know this video is going long, and I was going to hang up there. However, I know one of the other big issues is that forward rolled or slumped thoracic posture, that flex posture, that typical rounded shoulders. Now, this is obviously really big in office, especially without that nice ergonomic setup. But what you can do is also just understand that that's going to happen in an office setup. Just try and set yourself up with flat feet on the floor, 90 degrees hip, 90 degrees knee. Have some sort of elbow support, like at 90 degrees, or keeping your elbows in line with your body. Bring your keyboard and mouse as close to you as possible so you're not actually having to reach forward. Tuck your chair in. Make sure the top 2/3 mark on your monitor is at your natural eye level when sitting in a good posture. And that's at least the start of a very basic ergonomically sound setup for an office. Then obviously the next step is to activate those muscles that are helpful in creating that good posture and stretching out the muscles that get tight. So you want to stretch out the pec muscles, simply getting up into this position, having a corner of a bench be there and rotating away is going to help to stretch those muscles in your pecs, pec minor, pec major. Obviously, some palpation helps to get into the pec minor, which is a deep muscle that attaches to your shoulder up and through here. But simply, the strengthening component to help with that postural stability is actually your lower trap muscles and rhomboid muscles. So let's sit here in the back. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is their job is actually to bring your scapula back, and your scapula is part of your shoulder. So your shoulder blade, which is the technical name for your shoulder blade is a scapula, is actually the socket for your shoulder. So if you think about it and you think about the bottom angle of your shoulder blade, so in through here, and you think about a diagonal line from your shoulder, that bottom angle of your shoulder blade in towards the middle of your spine, that's kind of the angle or the contraction that you want to do in those lower trap rhomboid muscles to get your scapulas feeling flat along your back and helps to get into that nice good posture. So from here, what I'm actually doing is I'm creating that diagonal, and it's just that slight tilt back of my shoulders, which helps to get me in that nice good posture. So it looks from here, it's not up, back, down, that's rubbish. It's actually not the right way to get in a good posture. It's literally just that tilting, which puts you into that nice straight back, good thoracic posture. And what you can do is literally just practice activating those muscles when sitting on the spot. You know, give yourself 5 to 10 reps of activating those muscles, or even hold, you know, for 30 seconds, and just being conscious of it, setting a reminder in your phone, just like everything else. Is an easy and really achievable good way of trying to correct the bad postures and the bad physiological things that happen from being an office worker. I hope that's been very helpful for those of you who are stuck being inactive in their roles. I know I certainly have many days in my position where I'm very inactive, so I got to keep myself accountable and an eye on it. So these are incredibly helpful, very easy little tips that can make significant differences to your health and well-being. So I hope you've enjoyed them. Please leave me a message or send a comment below if you want any further clarification on things. But thank you very much for joining me this morning. And until next time, my friends, you take care of yourselves and those around you. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will catch up again next week. Thanks very much, guys, and take care.